Hi, I'm Nate, the Fair Banking Nerd, and today we're going to teach you some of the low-hanging fruit for you to get started as you're trying to get credit for community development so you can pass your CRA exam, especially if you're a first or second time ISB and you're struggling and you just aren't getting to where you think you need to be. And so hopefully you've already done the work and you kind of know that you need more and you just don't know where to look. And so if you're in that situation, this is the video to start with. Now, I will admit up front, this whole series is not meant to train you on everything with CRA. One of my goals is to provide no cost and low cost training and monitoring efforts as far as CRA and fair lending goes for community banks, to give them a fighting chance to basically compete with the bigger institutions and minimize the compliance costs associated, because you guys just don't have the same budget as the larger institutions to keep up with everything. And I've seen it as an examiner. And so now that I'm on my own, doing my own consulting business, I want to kind of give back to community banks and give you a fighting chance. So that's my purpose. It's not to train you on everything. At the very end, I will show you where you can go for a very comprehensive program if you have it in your budget and you have the time. But right now, we're assuming you're just trying to get off the ground. You don't have a budget. So you're looking for free resources and you're probably stretched on time. You might be at a community bank where you're wearing many hats and you're stuck and you're panicking and you don't feel ready for that CRA evaluation. So I'm going to go through a few different activities and some of the low-hanging fruit in the different buckets that you can use, specifically affordable housing, community services, and economic development. Hopefully, one of these three will give you a aha moment and make you feel better and at least get the ball rolling. Because once the ball gets rolling with community development, it tends to keep rolling and you learn the next thing and you go down the next path. But right now, we're just trying to get you started to make you feel a little bit better. So let's start with affordable housing. Now, the low-hanging fruit in affordable housing is when you have a complex that gets built and money and units are set aside for low and moderate income families, and there's income restrictions, and you basically get the contract or the development information, and you go right in there and you just highlight lines. Oh, so many of this percent of units is set aside, and here's the income threshold, and voila, it's pretty easy to document. That truly is the low-hanging fruit. But if you stick to that, you're only going to get about maybe 1/10 of what you can possibly be taking credit for in affordable housing. And of course, then you're not going to be able to compete with the other institutions in your areas, especially the larger institutions that know how to do this. So I'm going to share my screen real quick and let's get started and let's pour into this. So I'm down here a little in the corner because I want you paying attention. Oh, up there. This is the HUD website. You can just Google HUD Fair Market Rents. And basically what you're trying to do is you've got rental loans to rental housing type units, and you want to show that this is affordable housing, even though they don't technically have set-asides or anything like that, but you're serving the low and moderate income housing need in these areas, which happens quite a bit. Now, if they're located in low and moderate income census tract, that helps your argument. And all of this that I'm going to show you is a proxy. It's not perfect. This particular one can be questioned every once in a while, but it is a pretty good start to getting credit. And if you want to tighten up your documentation because it's borderline or right along these thresholds, then you certainly can do that, especially if it's going to be a large portion of the community development that you're trying to take credit for. The bigger impact it's going to have on your score, the more you want to document, the stronger case you want to have going. But this is your starting point. So you're going to go out and you're going to Google HUD Fair Market Rents, and you're going to go to your state. Now for this video, I'm just going to use Iowa. I'm sorry to pick on Iowa, but when I was an examiner, I spent about 8 years there, so I know it well. So Iowa, you're just going to say, give me statewide fair market rents. And so it'll go by different metro areas, and then down at the bottom, you can go down by county as well. Let's just stick to kind of the Des Moines metro. It's right in the middle of the state. A lot of people at least know what it is. Now, when you're looking at these, it is important that you have from, if we're talking a loan, from your borrower, what the breakdown is of that complex. If it's got 10 units, how many are 2 bedrooms? How many are 1 bedroom? And what are the rents that they're charging for each? And what we're going to try to establish is that the rent for the unit type is less than the fair market rent published by HUD. And that gives you a strong argument, not perfect, but a strong argument that this is indeed affordable housing. So say they've got a 10 unit and they're all 1 bedrooms and they're charging $900 a month. Well, according to this, in the Des Moines Metro, a 1 bedroom fair market rent is over $1,100. So we're well below that threshold. So we've got a pretty strong argument just stopping there. But you do need those rent records from that borrower, and those are hard to get back or to go back and get after you've made that loan. So try to get those up front, especially if you think you can get affordable housing. If it's a rental unit, get that information from the borrower before you make the loan. Now, it might be too late for that. So you're going to send out an email and say, we need your rent records. Tell us what type of units. And if to make a stronger case for you, if you can figure out and establish that the people living in those apartments truly are low and moderate income families, that's how you bulletproof getting affordable housing credit for these. So just going off of the fair market rents, you may be questioned. Now, there are ways to push back and you can ask for guidance. The hard part is this is never, it's kind of always generally been accepted by many of the regulators in many regions, but CRA and community development continues to be kind of the wild, wild west. So it may depend where you're at, who your regulator is. If you've got a new examiner, they may have never heard of this because they don't necessarily train this internally. This was kind of brought up by the industry and they started to get credit for it, especially the larger institutions, and it's finally started to trickle down to the community banks and they're learning how to do this as well. So the main argument is if you're giving them credit using this method, we should be getting credit too. Now, if those rents for those one-bedroom units are at $1,100 exactly, and you're only $9 under, and I don't know, they might live nearby, and there's a lot of nice cars in the parking lot, they would have room to question that, right? So the further below the fair market rents you can show, great, that's better. If I was an examiner and I was to test, say you had a lot of these, I would be looking at those units that are closer to the fair market rents and seeing if you've got additional documentation. So if it were me in your shoes, I would start with this. And if I've got the time and I've got resources or the information, the ones that are closest to the fair market rents, I would try to get additional documentation on who's actually living there and that type of thing. But if you've got this and you can show the rents are under, put it on your list, submit it, and let them tell you no or ask for more information if that's all you can get. Now, that's affordable housing. I have seen banks simply pass because of this type of trick. Now, I've also seen banks try to use the median rent values in that area, which isn't quite as good as the HUD Fair Market rents, especially if you're right at that median. They're going to question you and probably kick some or a lot of those out. And it might actually make them question your methodology and procedures and what you're doing. So I would try to stick to this HUD. The HUD Fair Market rents, I have seen median rents used sometimes more successfully than other times. But this also is a good nationwide. It's available across where the other median rents are more what you can come up with that area and what resources you have. So I would strongly recommend you stick to this HUD information. And I will put the link to this in the video description below if you're getting this video off of YouTube. So the next area or the next bucket that we want to talk about is community services. Now, when we talk about activities, remember your activities are loans, investments, and services. And then the bucket that we're talking about is community services. A lot of community services tends to be service activities, but investments, this is one where you can actually get a lot of investments credits too, which is where a lot of first-time ISBs struggle. Where do we get our investment credit from? Because donations are great, but they're small dollar. Bonds may just drive the ratios that you get judged off a lot better. So let's talk first about services within community services bucket, and then we'll talk about investments. So what I'm going to show you is a proxy. Again, just like the fair market rents that we just talked about is a proxy for affordable housing, which can be questioned. What we use for the community services bucket when we're going into school systems, such as if you're going in and teaching budgeting or financial literacy of some sort, we use the free and reduced lunch proxy to show that it is primarily serving LMI students or LMI individuals. Now remember, when we're in the community services bucket, we need it to be primarily LMI that is benefiting. So that is important, especially if the activity that we're talking about, actually activity or investments, has to be primarily LMI for community services. So we're going to go out to this nces.ed.gov, and I'll put the link in the video description as well, so you don't have to go find it. And this is where you can look up individual schools throughout the country and figure out the percent of students in that school that are eligible for the free and reduced lunch program. And if more than 50%, so 50.1 or more are free and reduced lunch eligible, then if you do go in and volunteer at that school, such as financial literacy, again, using your financial or technical expertise in whatever you're doing there, then you can claim services credit. So let's just do one real quick. Let's look at Iowa again. Sorry for picking on you, Iowa. I actually really do love Iowa. Let's look at Des Moines again and see what it comes up with. Now I'm just doing this on the fly as we record. I don't plan to re-edit or do anything like that. But let's see here. You can tell here, okay, so you got West Des Moines and Des Moines basically, and all these others you can tell by the students. If you're looking right here, if you can follow my cursor, the biggest in the Des Moines school district, you can see 30,000, and then that right here, if you're in West Des Moines, which is, well, west of Des Moines, it's its own city, then you've got about 9,000 students. So let's go into the Des Moines Independent Community School District, and you can look up here where it says district name, you can say schools in this district. Now, unfortunately, this doesn't give you a breakdown by district, and I'll have to show you how you can do that on a case-by-case basis, and that's important for investments. But for right now, sticking to the services activities, you probably are trying to figure out school by school. Now, while that's trying to pull up, because my internet seems to be slow today, a pro tip in this area is when you're looking for these opportunities at individual schools, elementary schools tend to have a higher rate of schools that qualify than, say, high schools, because the families are younger, they're starting out, and as the kids get up to high school, the parents have gotten promotions and whatnot. So it makes sense. So if you're looking to target, especially financial literacy, and you just don't know where to start with the elementary schools. But I'm going to go here. I'm going to look for the biggest student populations for this video, which is probably going to be the high schools. So let's look right here. We got for this first page, you can go through 15 more pages and look up all those schools in the district, but East High Schools, they've got almost 2,000 students. Let's just pull that up. And what you're going to look for is right here, you've got total students at this school, so 1952. And then down here, you've got your free and reduced price lunch eligibility, or eligible total, 1,530 students. So that's about more than 75%, so that's more than 50%. So if you do financial literacy or some type of volunteering at this school that uses your financial and technical expertise, you should get credit. You should take credit. This is your documentation. Ooh, wrong hand. All right, so that's what you're going to print out, and you're going to keep it in however you document all of your files, and you're going to have a spreadsheet that says so-and-so went in and taught budgeting or whatever it is at this school, and they are more than 50% LMI. And this right here is what proves you're primarily LMI for your community services bucket at an individual school. Now, let's go to investments, because this is where people can struggle, or banks can struggle a lot, especially when they're early on, is they look at their bond portfolio and say, how do I know what qualifies for community development? The very first area you're going to look at is school district bonds, especially when you get out in these rural areas for community banks, and you're not in metro areas that might have other opportunities. School district bonds are a great starting point to get your investments credit and get your ratio, the high dollar, not just the donations that are maybe $1,000 at a time, but $500,000 at a time, right? You can make $20,000 in qualifying donations in a year, but if you don't have a single bond that qualifies for community development, when you compare your institution's ratio to another institution's ratios, you're going to lose. So as we were making this video for the next part on how to look up school districts, I just got fed up with all the different sources and areas that you have to know where to go and everything. So I took some time off from making this video and made a new tool that I'm making available for free. So you're just going to have to email me at nate@faircommunitycreditsolutions.com. I'll put that on the screen to get this tool, and this is going to be so much easier than what it would have had to be. So forgive me for having a little bit of a different format for the video and everything like that. So here's basically what the tool is. There's going to be a warning page. You're going to want to read that just to make sure you agree with the agreement, the date, where the data is coming from and such. The second tab on here is a school district to look up. And I made a video to show you how to use this, so I'm not going to repeat it all here. If I make it work, you'll see a link up above, as well as a link in the video description where you can grab that video and watch how to use this tool. But basically, you can filter for your state and your counties and where you want to look up, and it will give you a list of the school districts that are going to qualify for your community services. As easy as that. So much easier than what I was going to have to teach you. Totally worth the time as long as people out there use it. So feel free if you do use it. Don't share it directly with friends, but have them email me, get a free copy themselves, and then everybody hopefully starts getting just enormous amounts of credit as they go forward. Now, I also, even though you just saw how to look up all of the schools manually, I also put a tab in here where you can do the same thing. You can just filter for your states, your counties where your assessment area is, or the state for your regional credit, that type of thing, and you can get a list of the qualifying schools. And do watch that video. There are a couple of things that you'll want to know as far as the pros and cons of the spreadsheet and how to use it, and some missing data in it, and the implications that will have, because I don't want you to miss opportunities that this spreadsheet might not capture. But overall, it's going to capture absolutely the most of what you will get credit for. And so hopefully you guys love it. So send me that email, watch that video, and then you'll just so easy to get your school district bond credit using this method and this proxy. All right, let's move on. So that helps you. We've gone over affordable housing. If you've got a lot of rentals and you're specialized lender and rental units, that's going to help you out. If you've got a lot of school district bonds and you weren't able to find any, hopefully that saves you on your investments. Now, maybe the biggest one is economic development. And this typically will go into loans, but it can go into any of the activities, of course. But the way it is, remember, with economic development, you've got two prongs. You've got a size threshold that you have to pass for the business that you're making a loan to, and you've got a purpose test, which is basically, for what I'm going to show you, is you need to show that either you're creating jobs in an LMI area or to LMI individuals. I'll show you how you can use a proxy for that as well, even though if you get better information, more precise information for the exact situation, that's even better. But these give you a fighting chance to get credit. So the mistake most beginner CRA officers or first-time ISBs make when you're first learning community development, they see that size threshold and they are looking for businesses with gross annual revenues under 1 million. Because if it is under 1 million, yes, you've already passed. But unfortunately, that you can use basically the SBDC or SBIC, which is basically correlated to the SBA size thresholds. So you can look up SBA size thresholds that go way higher than 1 million in gross annual revenues. So again, if you're using the 1 million and limiting yourself to that, you are giving up about 90% probably of your potential economic development loans. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to Google again SBA size thresholds, and you're going to get something like this. Now, I'm going to share a story that I've seen, a general story, about how this particular method completely saved a bank. And whatever method you choose is going to depend, or which one's going to save you, really it's going to depend on what your bank specialty is, or where you have a high volume of loans or investments and that type of thing. Well, there was a bank that had a lot of specialized investors in assisted living facilities. Now, the key to this was these investors, each assisted living facility, set up each building as an independent LLC. So if it was just one giant company that had, say, 20 assisted living facilities, when you compare it to these SBA thresholds, you would have lost out. But because they organized each assisted living facility as a separate LLC, even though the investors were similar at times, but the entity, for that entity, the gross annual revenues were under the SBA threshold. So let's look at this. I think I have it up here already. Okay, so let's scroll up here. So the SBA size thresholds that you're going to look at can either be by dollar amount, like we're talking, the $1 million and under automatically qualify. But look at these, 44 million, 47 million. That's way above $1 million. So it depends on the type of business using the NAICS industry descriptions. But there are some that actually go by number of employees too. And you can play around with that, and it depends on the industry which one it's going to use. So the assisted living facilities for the elderly, these facilities can make up to $23.5 million a year, and they will still meet the size test. Now, when I found that out, I said, okay, great, but are they creating LMI jobs or are they in LMI areas? And to me, I thought, well, a lot of these are going to be nursing jobs. But it's going to depend on where you are at, on whether those jobs are actually LMI or not. So hopefully, maybe when we made the loan, we got that type of information of what the jobs are being created. And maybe we have salary information. That would be bulletproof. But we don't have to give up just because, look, we're behind the game. We weren't proactive. We're just learning this. What we can do is say, okay, we think a reasonable person says, okay, 80% of the jobs in there are going to be RNs or some type of nurse, right? RN is a very high level nurse. Well, not the highest nurse, but a really high level nurse. So we can go to a website like this, just Google it, Iowa wages, salaries by occupation type or something, and see what you have available. And Iowa Workforce Development does have the information available. So we can go into this and say, okay, this is a spreadsheet that I was able to download and say, okay, let's do a search for nurse. Registered nurse, look at that right here. And if we scroll over here, somewhere in here, annual median wage is under $72,000 a year. Well, is that LMI? Well, that sounds like a fair amount, but remember, LMI is a median. The LMI for families actually takes the whole family. So if you have two people working, that kind of inflates what we compare to, right? So don't rule it out till you look this stuff up. Let's go over here. We're going to go to the FFIEC website, and you can download census and demographic data. And you can go out to where you're at, and you can get that median family income. Now, let's see. Let me make sure I have my phone on me to do some quick math here. And I don't think I got this pulled up, so we're not going to stop recording. We're just going to go back out and do this on the fly. Bear with me for a second. Let's pull this up. I believe this is still on Iowa, I hope. And let's see if we can't just get over this real quick. Okay. So for this is 2025. Of course, you want to match your years to when the loan is and such. Now, in metro areas, your median family income is going to be higher. So let's just scroll to the bottom and say, in the state of Iowa, is a nursing job typically going to be LMI? So in non-metro Iowa, where our median family income it should be the least, you got median family estimated income of $92,000. We take 8.8 of that for the 80% threshold, right? So we got 92,000 times 0.8, and I come out to 73,600. Well, the median salary of a nurse was under 72,000. So that is your documentation. If you don't have actual salaries, how you now go and say, hey, we're creating LMI jobs. Now remember, when we're dealing with economic development, community services has to be primarily LMI. Economic development, when we're saying that we're creating LMI jobs, it does not have to be primarily LMI, although the quality of what they're considering is going to be higher. But that's really hard for an examiner to do accurately. They're not really built for it. Their procedures aren't really built for that right now. So you have to basically show that a reasonable person is going to say, okay, LMI jobs have been created. So a lot of people will say, heck, a lot of, you do any loan to a business, you're going to create a janitor job or something, right? Now, I wouldn't go that far, because if you're doing a loan to start a law firm in the downtown area, you're probably not even creating a janitor job, because they're probably just going to use a janitorial service or something like that. So don't get too carried away, because you don't have to choose primarily LMI. You show what you can and be reasonable and document. And if you can't get the exact documentation of the 80% of the jobs are RNs and the salaries or the range of salaries from the borrower, you can use what I just showed you as proxies to try to get credit. And unless there's a reason for the examiner to question it, you should get credit. Now, make a strong case. Don't throw anything in there that's going to make them question everything or that you don't know what you're doing. So I've given you 3 ways that I've seen a lot of banks just saved by. Because till they learned one of these, most banks aren't using all 3. They're finding the one that fits them, and it is saving them on their first ISB. It is getting them enough. Now, they're usually still typically behind their peers on their ratios and whatnot, but it gets them enough to pass. And typically with the first time ISB, you're just trying to pass because you're probably overwhelmed, and you don't feel ready, and you're unsure about your documentation, and you don't know where to start. So hopefully out of those three, something jives with what your bank is doing, and you pick that one and you see what you can get. Now, again, this is really scratching the surface. I'm not going to be able to take the time to put an entire program together, especially for free like I'm doing these videos. So once you do these videos, this video series that I'm doing will get you somewhere. But you're not going to be an expert, and especially if you're a CRA officer where it is your job, you probably should know more. So Linda Izuka, she has a program. Her company is CRA Today. I recommend, especially once you get over your first ISB exam, check this out, see if it's in your budget. She's got a couple of things. She's got a training program. I think it's a 10-week course. Just go out, Google CRA Today, and you can look up her website. She's got a 10-week training course. It's a live course where you interact with other bankers. You get to network and see what other people are doing. And then you can also, if you want, take a test and get a certification to show that you know what you're doing in CRA. She also has something called the Hub, which is, again, where you get to network and bounce ideas off people and have access to her as the expert. I think she's got over 30 years of experience, plus you're going to probably be exposed to professionals in larger institutions who have been doing this for a while, and you can ask questions. You can listen to what they're trying to do and what they're trying to document and how they're being proactive and what procedures they're putting in place. So right now, hopefully I helped you feel a little bit better today, but you're not going to be an expert just watching this free training series on YouTube. Hopefully it makes you feel a little bit better, especially if you don't have a budget to go out for a training program right now because you weren't planning on it. Hopefully I can give you a fighting chance to pass your test, but you're not going to be an expert. So with that, we will continue doing, I think, another 4 or so of these videos, and we will see you on the next one. Bye.